Heroes and Villains by Angela Carter, published in 1969, is a post-apocalyptic novel set in a world which has been devastated by nuclear war. Most of civilized humanity are now residing within these walled-off towns because on the outside of them, in the wilderness, there are these roaming tribes of nomadic barbarians, as well as mutants, which are referred to as the out people. We follow a young woman named Marianne in this story who has spent most of her childhood studying the books in her father's library, which has made her quite intelligent but also endlessly curious about the world outside of the walls. So she spends a lot of her time in this tower in the town, looking out into the world beyond the town, and at times actually venturing outside of the town to investigate the ruins of the old world. When she is a child, she witnesses a barbarian raid on this town where she witnesses the death of her brother, and as a young adult where we're following her, she is on one of her excursions outside of the town when she is captured by the barbarians and taken away from her home. I'm going to keep this relatively spoiler-free, but most of the book is essentially Marianne grappling with this strange new way of life, with these barbarians which have an affinity with snakes, engaging in bizarre rituals that are vaguely reminiscent of religious tradition. The plot here is relatively light and meandering, and Carter is more focused on crafting this fantastical feeling world. It's not fantasy by any means, but it definitely has that feel to it. And that comes through some really strong writing. Angela Carter comes from a more literary background, and you can definitely feel that coming through. Although I think what that results in is characters who feel really unnatural and unrealistic, since Marianne frequently has to endure quite horrific events, and the way that she reacts to them never seems to really make sense. And that extends beyond Marianne into some of the other characters who have behaviours and vocabularies which don't seem to really fit into this world at all. There is quite a lot of symbolism in the book, and the whole thing feels a little bit more like a fable. You can probably see that from this amazing cover art, which depicts some of the snakes that the barbarians use in their rituals. So I didn't really like this overall because I felt that the plot was weak and the characters were unrealistic, but there were points where I did enjoy Angela Carter's writing, and I do think when she is describing the world itself, that's when the book shines the most. The Drowned World by J.G. Ballard is another kind of post-catastrophe novel set in a world which has been devastated by these kind of solar flares which have heated the planet to the point that the ice caps have melted and sea levels have risen, engulfing most of the world's landmass. It's got so hot in the equatorial regions of Earth that humanity have mostly fled to the North and South Poles, and anyone residing in the radiation-stricken central regions are either losing their minds, suffering from physical illnesses, or just unable to find the means to get away. The book is set in a city which is now obviously flooded, and we follow a group of scientists and military personnel who are studying this world and the flora and fauna that have now kind of become established due to these new environmental conditions, such as these kind of enormous iguanas who are really dominant within the city, crocodiles, giant bats, enormous spiders, and more. And the military are more concerned with mapping out these flooded cities and identifying potential points of refuge to establish harbours and docks. The characters receive an order pretty early on to return to their base of operations in the Northern Hemisphere, And the first part of the book is essentially these characters deciding whether to return or to stay within this flooded city. The main character that we follow here is called Kerens, and he lives in this abandoned hotel, the Ritz Hotel, where some of the characters are experiencing these collective nightmares. I've said that I enjoyed Angela Carter's writing. I think with Ballard, I'll go a step further and say that I think his prose is some of the best that I've encountered so far on this science fiction reading journey. And off the top of my head, I think I'd put him up there with the likes of Alfred Bester and William Gibson. And this is really because his descriptions, particularly of the plant and animal life, as well as the environments, is extremely evocative, creating these strong, gloomy, distinct visuals that I think will stick with me long after I've finished this. Reviews of this one will sometimes point to the plot being a bit lacking as well as the characters, and I think that probably is fair, but I do think the writing is so strong that it just carried me through this effortlessly, and I enjoyed every moment of it. There is a kind of villain character who comes into the picture who is probably a bit on the cartoonish side, but I did enjoy his presence and it facilitated some really strange and interesting scenes. This is the only J.G. Ballard novel that I've read so far, and after reading it, I'm excited to go and read some more from him. Once again, both of these are present in Science Fiction, the 100 Best Novels list by David Pringle, which I'm working my way through as part of a challenge on this channel. I'm actually thinking of taking a bit of a break from this list at some point because there are a few other bits and pieces that I do want to get to in the new year. And I've probably only got 1 or 2 more books in me before the beginning of 2025. So thanks again for watching, liking and subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.